I'm going to go over SPY, Palantir, Apple, and many other stocks and give you price targets for Tuesday. First up is SPY. We ended the day at $456.69, basically at the middle of the trend. To the north side, a gap fills at 458.63. Two standard deviations and resistance is 459.72. Above that, at another level of resistance and a possible take profit area as well, 461.17. And finally, 462.59. To the south side, at negative two standard deviations, 453.99, 452.58, 451.11. Now to Palantir. I do own this stock. We ended the day at $18.40, down more than 9%. To the north side from where we are takes us back to the middle of the trend, 1885. 1969, a gap forms to the upside at 1990. Three standard deviations and another level of resistance, 2011. That gap closes out at 2020. And at four standard deviations, $20.54. I never expect a stock to make it up to this level in one day, but should we make it here, I will definitely anticipate a sell-off. Now, to the south side, negative two standard deviations and support and a potential buy-in area, $18, $17.59, and $17.15. This was an old price target right here that we have already hit. We hit it at 1603. Now, also looking left, this gap closed to the downside at 1973. Notice we hit resistance here, and what happens when we hit resistance? Price tends to fall apart, grinding sideways, consolidating, and possibly going down just a little bit more, but I will anticipate a little bit of a bounce. This stock got beaten up today. And I talked about this gap previously. I will extend it. It has not closed out. It is still in play. This closes out to the downside at roughly 1494. This one closes out at 1394, and I believe there are one or two more to the south side, but we are not there. We are not in that channel down here just yet, but when we are, I will definitely let you know. But this one's getting close to the channel that we need to be careful for. A lot of landmines to the south side with Palantir still. The next one is Apple. My largest individual holdings. We ended the day at 189.43, down nearly 1%. We are at the middle of the trend, the mean, the baseline. If we are here from down here, this is resistance. So I will anticipate a little bit of grinding along this line or sideways before we fill this gap. Now, to the north side takes us to that gap fill at 190.05, closes out at 190.94, 191.37, 192.41, and I won't hold my breath for a price to get to this level, but it would be nice, 193.44. To the south side, negative two standard deviations and another level of support, 187.24. When we slide down, that turns into support. On the way up, we turn into resistance. Now, negative two standard deviations is 186.23 and 185.21. This gap, looking left, is still in play. You can see this one. Well, let me mark this one out first. See how we touched here? So this gap at 188.17 is done. We touched right here. If we gap up, I anticipate price to go down to fill that gap, and we did there. Took a little while. That opened up on the 16th. So that is done. This gap also closed out today, right here. All right, a lot of landmines, as I had mentioned, to the south side, but they are slowly closing. So that closed out at roughly 187.51. And what happens at support? A bounce right here. Now we are at resistance. So I do anticipate this to fill tomorrow or by Wednesday and then possibly go to the south side. But this gap is still in play at 184.79 and 182.49. We are not in this zone yet. All right, the next one I want to go over is FCX. We ended the day at 37.61, down more than 4%. To the north side takes us to a gap to the north side again at 38.34, the middle of the trend and resistance in this situation, 38.57. This gap closes out at 39.20 roughly. Above that, at another level of resistance, 39.96, 40.63, 41.37. To the south side, this gap closes out at 37.33, 37.15, 36.47, and 35.77. I anticipate both of these gaps to the north side and to the south side to fill on Tuesday. And if you're playing conservatively, what I would do is buy somewhere down here, here, and here, and then ride it up. You could ride it up to the middle of the trend and get out, or take it up to 2 standard deviations and get out, because anytime we go into this territory, I will anticipate people take their profits and price to fall. Watch the RSI as well at 41. It's still going down, so if it goes down, this gap should close out. The next one is LNG. We ended the day at 174.17, down more than 4%. To the north side takes us back to the baseline, 176.85. If you are in this trade around here and played it very conservatively, you could just ride it to this line and get out, or take your chances and then go to this part and then anticipate a pullback. All right, to the middle of the trend, 176.74, a gap opens up at 179.79. 2 standard deviations is roughly 180.87. This thing fills out at 181.61. And the next level, 182.87 and 184.97. It's gravy if we get to this line in one day. But if I were in it and I set a limit to get out tonight for Tuesday, I like to take it to a round number, say like 181.60, or take it up to 181.65. I push it sometimes just a little bit, and then I get out if I am doing a quick trade, a quick swing trade, I should say. Now, to the south side, -2 standard deviations, 172.75, 170.62, 168.59. And Salesforce CRM, I've talked about this recently. Marat pointed this out, and he did that recently when we were at 228.79. Congrats if you've made some money here. Check this out. So we were here when he pointed it out, and I took a look at it. We went sideways up a little bit. So if we are down here, this is resistance. We busted through and went to 2 standard deviations. I play -2 to 2 standard deviations all day long. Anything outside of that is an outlier, a signal to definitely get in or get out, because price will either go up or flush you out. All right, so it went here. This is basically resistance, falls back down, grinds to the side, takes it back up to resistance. So that was roughly 263.34. What happens at resistance? Price falls, people take their profits and they run, and look what happens. This turns into support, fell through, and now we are here. We could touch around here and then go back up. So I anticipate all of this right here to close on Tuesday. That's not hard for price to get to that level, I don't think. All right, here we go. To the north side, we're very close to the middle of the trend, 261.24. Note the 1 year price target when I looked at it on the 30th. Let me see if it changed. Yep, just a little bit there. It's now 273.92, a 9% return from where we are. Obviously, you could possibly even get it lower because we have some gaps to the south side I want to talk about. All right, from here, this gap to the north side, again, 255.19, 259.81, 261.18 roughly, price target here. 2 standard deviations, 275.14, 282.05, don't hold your breath, 289.23. Negative 2 standard deviations and support where I anticipate a bounce, 247.15, 240.10, 232.98. As you can see, many landmines to the south side. This gap has not closed out. I will extend it. What goes up must come down. It will fill. So if you're wanting to get in, maybe just wait a little longer or go short, although I don't do options. It could take a while to get down here, but we are starting to get there. And this gap is still in play as well. Closes out at roughly 225.05. Take a look at this on the daily, the weekly, the monthly. Gives you different buy and sell signals, and you can see all the gaps that are still open. The next one is PANW, Palo Alto. We ended the day at 286.58, down more than 3% to the north side, takes us to 289.03. $299.76, and another level of resistance and an outlier, a take profit area. If you're doing quick trades, 303.34 to the south side, negative 2 standard deviations where I anticipate a bounce, 281.81, 278.26, 274.80. This gap, I will turn on my magnet. It helps me mark out the area a little more precisely. So it gapped up. I anticipate it to gap down and fill, which would take us down to negative 3 standard deviations, 278.06. And I like to color code everything. Since that's going down, I turn it red. And this gap right here use the rectangle, mark it out. There we go. And because this is going a gap down, I anticipate it to fill, and that would take us, turn off my magnet, 295.88 to the upside. Note the crash here at resistance. And where did it go? To support. So I will anticipate it definitely to get to here and most likely up to there on Tuesday. To the south side, this will fill at 278.11. All right, Intel, I talked about this very recently. We are now at 42.35. This gap opened up today. All right, 42.91 to the north side. A gap begins to the upside at roughly 43.30, basically at 3 standard deviations. It closes out at 43.65 and another take profit area 43.76. This gap here is still in play as well. Closes out at 44.59. And to the south side, back at the middle of the trend. And check this out, RSI falling, so I definitely will anticipate it to hit here at 42.08, 41.22, 40.80, and roughly 40.38. I'm going to do 2 more. SNPS ended the day at 531.20, down more than 2.5%. To the north side, a gap begins at roughly 2 standard deviations, 541.15. A take profit area, gap closes out at 544.93. The gap closes out at 544.93. 547.62. 553.80. If we make it to here, I will definitely anticipate a pullback, even along here. This is resistance, and you know what happens at resistance. This is support. You know what happens at support. 528.43, 515.61, 509.04, 502.80. As you can see, this is a very expensive stock in the $500 range, but we are up 52% for the year. For the week, down 2.5%. For the 3-month period, up 15%. And it is considered a buy. 1-year price target, 604.66, a 13% return from where we are. Again, take a look at this in the big picture. You can see where we are going or where we could potentially go after we hit this to the south side. Final one, NVDA, 455.10 is where we ended. And that is down 2.6%. To the north side takes us to 460.08. A gap begins to the upside at 460.71. 464.12. That gap closes out at resistance, 467.13. 4 standard deviations and another take profit area, 468.32. Now to the south side. 451.75, 443.48, 439.51, and 435.50. The RSI is curling down. We are overbought nearly. All right, looking left, notice how we never stay above 70 without consolidating, falling down. I just use this as support and resistance. And why do I have this at 444 marked? I looked at this a long time ago. Sometimes I just mark out support and resistance, and in this case it was the trading view price target of 444.76, which we have obviously hit already. And let's just take a look at this on the hour. I never really look or show you price targets on the hour. So looking left on the hour, on the hourly time frame, we got close to 2 standard deviations resistance, couldn't quite get there, but sold off. And look at, could we hit here? Sure. There's a gap actually on the hourly that I can see that will take us there eventually. Turn on my magnet. Right? Because this will fill to the downside, I will make that red. Sometimes it's better to turn off the magnet too. It gives a weird wonky, it wants to pull to certain things. All right, 423.13. So that's NVDA on the 1 hourly time frame. That gap closed to the south side already. Note the bounce here at support. Sell off up there, sell off down here, rinse and repeat. That does it for me. That's a look at SPY, Palantir, Apple. Oh, let me show you one more very quickly that I talked about just yesterday. All right, I looked at this on Sunday night. Getting sidetracked here. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see. All right, when I talked about this on Sunday night, the next day we gapped up. Wait a minute. We did not gap up. I'm sorry. There was a gap over here that I talked about that started on the 20th. It gapped down, so I anticipated it to fill to the upside on Sunday. I marked it out. And this was where we were. We went up. This is one level of resistance. Another level of resistance did not make it there. I never expect price to get out of 3 and 4 standard deviations, but always within -2 and 2, and it did. It tried to hit here, did not, started to fall apart, went down, went back up to resistance, and now look at us, we're down here, making our way, trying to grind back up. But we did fill this gap right here. We touched, so this gap is no longer in play. We are done with this one. And we ended the day here at 49.98. To the north side now, back to the middle of the trend is 50.35, 50.95, 51.25, 26-ish, 51.56. Support takes us down to 49.76, 49.46, and 49.15. The 1-year price target is $64.05, a 28% return from where we are. But of course, it's going to be a lot of upside and downside and many opportunities to swing trade, which I like to do. Now that does it for me. Thanks so much for watching.